That is exactly right. We are, I believe, potentially Earth's intelligence, you know. And people, when I say that, sort of take a step back and don't know quite what I mean, but I can only explain it by analogy, really, that we are Earth's intelligence, a bit like, you know, your brain is your intelligence. You don't think that your toe's particularly intelligent, yeah, but you're an intelligent being. And we are so intimately part of this Earth, we are quite literally just a part of the Earth's crust, you know, that we are the Earth's intelligence in the same sense that our brain is our intelligence as individuals, potentially. Up to now, we haven't been able to apply that intelligence to the intelligent management of our planet because we've existed in a tribal world where the focus has been wrong. It's been on conflict and power blocks between people. But that's changed over the last few decades. You know, with people are now more interconnected than ever. We're talking about global treaties to regulate the gaseous composition of the atmosphere. You know, we are on the threshold of doing something very different. So that gives me optimism.
You talk about the plants and the soil. Talk to us a little bit about the oceans and what you see and where you see real concern.
Yeah. Well, look, the oceans are this enduring mystery. You know that humans have been to the moon more times than they've been to the depths of the oceans. You know that there's only been one trip down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench in all of human history, and we've been to the moon on multiple occasions. And it still is a large blank. It's only over the last 3 or 4 years that we've deployed a system of monitoring buoys and so forth sufficiently sophisticated to give us a sense of how the oceans work. We still don't understand it very well. But what we do know is that the oceans are, in the medium term, the regulator of the planet in a large sense. And when they start to change, boy, you cannot stop them. It's not like the atmosphere. You know, the oceans are 500 times bigger than the atmosphere. You know, and they have their own chemistry and their own balance, and life keeps them the way they are. But we know from past periods of Earth history that the oceans have turned toxic. You know, we can read that in the rocks of our planet. And those periods of ocean toxicity is when the oil forms. You know, living things fall to the bottom of the sea and don't rot away because there's no oxygen in the depths, and that forms the oil and natural gas. And one of the great fears that we have in the longer term is that as our planet warms, we may see another period of ocean toxicity.
You're already seeing things in the skeletons of some animals in the ocean, are you not?
That's right, particularly, it's interesting, off the west coast of Canada, in that North Pacific area. Ocean acidification there, and I should just explain that oceans acidify when carbon dioxide goes into the ocean and forms carbolic acid and makes the oceans more acid. And when they become more acid, animals that lay down a carbonate shell have great difficulty doing that because of the physiology can't handle the extra acid. And we've already seen off the coast of Canada the sort of air, the depth at which animals can lay down shell has become shallower by over 100 metres just in the last few decades. And that means that prawns, crabs, lobsters, oysters, whatever else you want to think about out there can't survive at those lower depths now. And that is continuing to rise as we put more CO2 into the atmosphere. So these are disturbing trends. We can't know where they'll end up because we don't understand enough about the oceans, but anyone looking at those sort of trends would have to have, I think, concern that we're heading in the wrong direction.
And we can't know where it will end up, but we do have a history lesson on what happened to the oceans a long, long time ago.
We do. We see that in the most extreme cases, and no one knows whether the current phase of global warming could precipitate such major change, but we do know that in the most extreme cases, the ocean dies from the bottom up and it fills with bacteria that don't need oxygen to survive. And as they get towards the surface, that dead zone, once it gets to the sunlit surface of the ocean, particular kinds of bacteria take over, the sulfur bacteria, that puts sulfur into the atmosphere, that destroys the ozone layer, that severely compromises life on Earth, and the planet starts to die, you know, and we have seen that happen in the geological record. And that, at that point, goodness, if we change the planet that much, I don't know what hope there is.
You write that we're at a tipping point.
Yeah, we are. We are actually beyond the tipping point for the climate system, according to the latest science. So the tipping point's the point where we've got enough pollution in the atmosphere to drive the climate into a new state. But you know that the heating has to persist for a number of decades. before that becomes inevitable. And that point of inevitability is called the point of no return by scientists. So at the moment we are poised between a tipping point and the point of no return. We can't know how far away the point of no return is, but a reasonable guess is that it's some decades. So we do need to use the power of plants to pull some of the gas out of the air. We do need to stop polluting and start acting as responsible global citizens.
Well, you didn't just come here to depress us tonight. You actually do think that there are things we could work on. You also write that the problem of CO2 is that humanity fails to see the urgency. Like, we could do something if we would just get with it.
Well, yeah, and it's strange. You'll often hear these arguments in a place like Canada or Australia that addressing this issue will bankrupt us all and destroy the economy and destroy jobs. And it is such a stupid argument, because just look at a place like Europe that's already reduced its emissions by 5% over 1990 levels and has pledged to do it by another 20%. You know, they're not bankrupt; they're doing perfectly well, thank you. You know, and their economies are not that different from the Canadian economy. So I think that we can do this, but it's vested interests, it's a lack of political ambition. And it's also a lack, I think, of seeing this issue for what it really is, which is the greatest challenge that humanity's ever faced. You know, Lord Stern, one of my great heroes, probably the brightest economist to write on climate change, said that these meetings coming up in Copenhagen are the most important meetings to have taken place since World War II. And I think he's absolutely right about that. And unfortunately, the leaders in many countries are not viewing them in that light.
Well, explain to us what will happen at Copenhagen and what we should watch for here as that gets underway.
I wish I knew what was going to happen.
That's in December, right?
Yeah,
everyone's meeting in December?
That's right. They're all meeting in December in Copenhagen. We are hoping that heads of state are going to turn up. You know, so we're hoping that prime ministers and presidents will go there. That is by no means clear as yet. My heart leapt the other day when I saw that Barack Obama was going to Copenhagen. Unfortunately, he was going there to bid or help bolster Chicago's bid for the Olympics. So I got that one wrong. But I figure, you know, what sort of president would he be to go there for that and not go back for the climate meeting? So, you know, let's hope he'll be there. But anyway, we hope that we'll get all 189 heads of state together in a room, and they will agree on the broad principles for the new treaty. Of course, there'll be no detail behind it, but we'll have an agreement on the broad principles. After that will follow years of nutting out the detail of ratification and so forth. But we desperately need that level of agreement at least. You know, 12 months ago I was hopeful that we might get a fully fledged treaty out of this, but I think that the time has passed for that now.